Welcome into the SunDevilSource.com postgame show. I'm Zane Hopen, joined as always by Chris Cartman and Kevin Stewart. And Arizona State just suffered their second loss at home on the year. They now fall to 4-4 on the season, 3-2 in conference with the 48-17 loss right here to USC. And, Chris, initial reactions here because, we'd seen ASU really build some momentum in the last 2 weeks, and then here a home test against USC, obviously the 21st ranked team in the country, but just a completely different team, really.
Hard ASU team to figure out, Zane. Just seeing all the explosive plays by USC. This is a Trojan team that probably hadn't looked this good offensively at any point in time this season. Maybe the first half against Stanford when it had 28 points, that had a really good game. But just given the way that ASU had played the previous two opponents, especially against the run, to see it get dominated at the point of attack and give up 6 30-plus yard runs in 2+ quarters of play and the game was really over, I didn't anticipate that. And USC's offensive line had just been okay at earlier points in this season, and not good in some games. And sure, yeah, USC's 4-1. They got good athletes and all that, but such a huge contrast of how ASU played in this game versus what we saw the last two games, and a big regression, you would have to say, overall. Basically wiping away a lot of the momentum that they had from what they were able to do in the previous 2 weeks.
And Kevin, we kind of talked about this before the game. USC coming off a tough loss against Notre Dame, but I'll let you explain really what you said kind of proved me wrong.
Yeah, well, I thought if there was going to be a blowout tonight, it'd be USC winning big. They were, how you want to put it, wounded. They're, injuries. Their margin for error was really small if they were going to have a good year. They had to start playing well. They had to start playing well tonight. They came out fast. They established the run. ASU on the other side couldn't get anything going, couldn't sustain any drives. It just was a mismatch from the get-go.
And Chris, going back to the defense, we'd really seen them pick it up. But 16 explosive plays from USC. Ronald Jones had more rushing yards in this game than Washington and Utah did combined against ASU in the last 2 weeks. So where did you really see it break down?
There was a few plays there early where ASU was playing in the backfield. Had a couple sacks. They were getting to the quarterback a little bit. Had some tackles for loss. But then that sort of went away, I think, as the game unfolded. USC's third down conversions early were big. Third and 12, third and 10, third and 10. One was a Tayshawn Smallwood personal foul where maybe he didn't hear the whistle, but you got to stop there. Todd Graham referenced that. Those are the only third down conversions that USC had in the first half, but they scored on all those. And that looked more like ASU early in the season. Remember when ASU was on third and extra long, was giving up like 50% of its third down conversions. So that was what I talked about, basically that major regression. And then ASU didn't help its defense because it was just had no rhythm, and it was just getting off the field in a hurry time and again. And so it just seemed like it just kind of snowballed for ASU there. And the sideline seemed to not really have an answer. They didn't really know what they were trying to accomplish. And I think in every facet, game plan, play calling, execution of what they were trying to do, they basically failed in every area. And sure, USC has better athletes than ASU overall, but USC hadn't played to that level. It just seems like USC has a tendency to sort of get into gear against ASU. Last year was the same thing. Now we're seeing it again. The way that USC played tonight, it looked like a team that's capable of running the table the rest of the way.
And, piggybacking off USC's athletes, something we talked about on our podcast previewing this game was, whether or not this whole defensive juggernaut of ASU was a fluke or not, because, Utah and Washington, in terms of skill players, near the bottom of the Pac-12. So how much of it really, Kevin, was USC's skill players versus, ASU's defense playing poorly?
It was probably a little bit of everything. I think the offensive line dominated ASU at the point of attack, but we saw guys exposed in space tonight that we really hadn't seen all year. Kobe Williams, a couple of missed tackles. I don't know if he really had that at all this year. Chad Adams missed one. Daz had a really big one. Then he went out with injury. So they,
No, he got ejected from the game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, my bad. That's right. He got the targeting. So, no phase really played well. Nothing complemented each other. That's what they've been doing well on defense the last couple of weeks, as the run game, the pass game, everything played off each other. There was none of that going on tonight that you could see, at least with any consistency.
And then offensively, Chris, what are some things that stuck out to you?
Manny Wilkins, poor start. I don't think he was put in the best position to be successful. Given what Notre Dame had done to USC, just really going with heavier personnel groupings and running the ball successfully early on, I feel like that was probably what we needed to see more of from ASU. At a minimum, if you're doing that, you're on the field a little bit longer. You're kind of hammering away. If it's not going to work early, maybe you're setting up the game for later on. I don't know that they really did that well. They took too many negative plays. Like Cole Cabral had a really bad game on the edge, trying to block. Zach Robertson really struggled. Nwosu was getting in there. Porter Gustin played, which wasn't necessarily anticipated. He was racing around the edge. And I think ASU lost confidence as the game was going on with this offensive line, and then that sort of made things worse. But they had too many third and mediums or third and shorts where they didn't get any conversion, and then the defense is back out there in a hurry and kind of reeling and unable to really gather itself. And like Kevin said, it just was a very disjointed effort overall. The harmony of what ASU had done in the last couple of weeks was very strong, and it just wasn't there at all. This just looked like much more in the vein of the team that we saw in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season.
And much like we've seen the last couple of weeks, Billy Napier really getting creative with the power running schemes with that Ram package, and no Sparky tonight at all, which I thought was really surprising given USC's defense and how they've played, especially physically up the middle. But, Kevin, when you look at the offense in this game, what are some things that you saw?
The inability to establish the run, like Chris was talking about. Notre Dame was able to do that, but Notre Dame's offensive line's got a couple of first-round draft picks on it. ASU's offensive line doesn't. It was a mismatch, and I think the lack of confidence, like Chris talked about, was a big thing, because as it progressed, it just felt like ASU lacked confidence in being able to run the ball. The only time they really got anything going there was the end of the half and the beginning of the second half when they were running tempo. But it's hard to run tempo when you're getting run over and you're on and off the field quick, because then you're not giving your defense a breather. It's not a good mix to be in.
You need first downs. You need to kind of get it to where you're moving the chains to where you can actually start to pick it up. Second half, they came out scripted. At the end of the first half, USC made some mistakes passing on 2nd and 19, 3rd and 19. ASU didn't have to use its timeouts. That enabled the Kyle Williams Hail Mary touchdown, and then ASU scores that first possession to make it a 2-score game. They get a field goal or a touchdown for touchdown. Yeah, so made it a two touchdown game. At that point, you thought, okay, maybe they're going to be able to get something together, and then USC comes right back out and just scores a long touchdown run. USC had a couple that were called back by penalties. So it could have even really been worse when you're looking at it.
I think they scored. They had the holding penalty, called it back, and then they ran for a touchdown right in the next play.
Right.
And it's just the big breakdowns, the chunk plays came back, and ASU just could not stop the run in the second half at all. Ronald Jones did not have a loss in any one of his carries tonight. Yeah. So the TFLs and the things that they've been doing the last few weeks weren't there.
ASU's had played probably the hardest run as far as like the running backs that they've faced this season, and Ronald Jones was up there. He looked like an NFL back for sure. The way he was making guys miss at the second level, third level. When Tautolotasi came out of the game, Evan Fields went in there and he ran himself out of position on a couple times. Phil Bennett was yelling at him because he missed a zone assignment that he had into the boundary.
Another touchdown was called back.
On one of the touchdowns that was called back. So they just got into a really bad way, and USC better athletes, had a better game plan, wanted it more, executed more. It was just in pretty much every way imaginable. More yardage from scrimmage than ASU gave up to Washington and Utah combined. That's a perfect example of what happened in this game.
Ronald Jones outrushed Utah and Washington combined. Just up and down the stat sheet. You look at it, and it doesn't look like anything you saw the last couple of weeks. It kind of looks like the Stanford stat sheet.
Yeah, and another thing on Ronald Jones, he made DJ Calhoun miss his first tackle of the season. I don't know if anybody mentioned that, but I got it on video.
We did
I have
tweet
proof.
about it.
Okay, I didn't see. But, another thing with the offense, Chris, we talked about this on the podcast coming into the week, the injuries in USC's secondary. And with ASU's ability and the talent at wide receiver that they have, we thought this was really going to be a game where Billy Napier had to take advantage of his talent on the outside, and it really didn't seem like he did that.
No, and USC plays a lot of single high safety. They bring another safety down into the box. It seemed like Napier was concerned about that because that's why you probably didn't see more Sparky package. But if that's the reality, then you have to be able to get those bubble plays and some of the wider. We didn't see enough of that. Like when they did that in the second half, Kyle Williams had success in that first drive. I'm not sure where that was. A lot of the passes that were outside the hashes and maybe even outside the numbers were kind of low percentage fades. They didn't really get N'Keal Harry involved. I think Manny Wilkins missed more open receivers tonight than he probably had in the whole season combined almost. There were just guys that were open. N'Keal Harry missed them on a touchdown through for Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams bobbles the ball. Jalen Harvey was open at times and they didn't get the ball to him. Kyle Williams was open at times, they didn't get the ball to him. I think he was just not in his element in this game from whatever USC was presenting to him structurally. And then just, I think probably because he was under so much duress that he just was uncomfortable and didn't know what he should be doing or was doing. And it was a game that reminded me more of Manny Wilkins from last season than this season in some respects as a result.
Yeah, I would say the pass protection never allowed Wilkins to really get comfortable in the pocket. His back foot hit, and he was already trying to make guys move, and he was in a position to make a throw if he had it. The 69-yard pass to N'Keal Harry should have been a touchdown. He threw that ball late because he was under pressure on that one too. So it was just a rough night for the offensive line, all from start to finish.
I don't think that they used the middle of the field properly in this game. Just the way that USC defends, you're going to have to try to get your athletes on their linebackers and safeties, and that wasn't there. There just wasn't enough of the field that they were able to access in this game, and they just didn't really have any answer for it as the night unfolded, other than that one series at the outset of the second half.
So knowing all this, really we've seen the best of ASU in the last 2 weeks, and the season's obviously not over, but so far probably the worst of ASU tonight, probably. So how can we, Graham's talked a lot about the identity of this team. So how can we, coming from the outside looking in, identify this team, seeing them at their best and now really at their worst in less than a week?
So this has been a roller coaster for fans' emotions, obviously. The way the season starts, it's like, okay, they're not going to get a bowl game. Todd Graham's looking like he might be fired. Then you go through this cycle where you're playing probably above what you actually are as a team against Washington, Utah. Everything kind of comes together and goes perfectly for you, and then it falls apart and you have a game that is a regression type of a game. If you try to just look at where ASU's at right now, 4-4, that's sort of what was anticipated. It's just not the way that you would have thought the 4-4 would have happened. They have to come back and beat Colorado next week. That's a game they should win at home pretty consistently. Should be a 7 to 10 point favorite, I would say. Should be able to beat Colorado. Then UCLA is a team that on the road, that's maybe a toss-up game, the way I see it. I mean, Washington easily handled UCLA today. Oregon State's a team that ASU is better than. Arizona's looking like it's definitely now going to give USC a competitive game, if not, be right there. They play next week. I'm interested to see what happens in that game. You're back to thinking about whether Todd Graham is safe or not. I think that they have to win 3 of the next 4 games to get to 7-5 for Todd Graham to at least feel like he's done enough to not have to worry about his status when the season ends. And so that means if you're ASU, you better beat Colorado, and you better beat UCLA and or Oregon State, because that Arizona game looms as something that not only just to get to a bowl game and sneak in, but to try to give yourself, something that allows you to sell what you've done moving into next season.
And what I would say, they're 3-2 in conference right now, and they haven't been favored in one conference game. And they will be for the first time next week. If they win 3 out of 4, that's 6-3 in conference. You got to think he's safe at 6-3 in conference.
Probably.
But yeah, you never know. But that would surprise me if he goes 6-3 in conference and it's not back.
Probably. But just to counterpoint this, if you look at Dirk Cutter, 7 wins, beat Arizona, gets fired. Todd Graham losing seasons the last 2 years. 7 wins is looking like a pretty good outcome right now. Because, Eight wins, very unlikely winning the next 4 games, right? 7 wins, they're somewhere between 6 and 7 as the 2 most likely outcomes. 6 and 6, it better not happen if you're Ty Graham, because that's setting yourself up to potentially not be around next year. 7 wins not going to be easy to get to. They need to get back into the rhythm with a game against Colorado, really play their best ball in November, and then kind of see where they're at.
Final thoughts from both of you.
Unpredictable season, really, really hard. I think this is the worst I've ever done prognosticating ASU. But it's like, I don't know that there's any real way to know what's coming on any given week from this team. I just don't think that there is.
Yeah, the way they're playing, their margin for victory, they just don't, they can't make a lot of mistakes. They got to play a perfect game. They're not, no turnovers tonight. Oh, they got 1, but it was on a 4th down. So even to beat Colorado, they're going to have to play really well. You know, it's not a given they're just going to roll Colorado.
Last thought. Still a total lack of explosive plays from this team. It's like first couple games, they had some big plays. Receivers getting 100 yards games. That's just gone away. It's just totally gone away. And they've played some good defenses, but there's just not enough happening from this offense as they move into the last quarter of their season.
Again, Arizona State with the loss tonight here at Sun Devil Stadium, 48-17 to number 21 USC, and I guess we'll see which ASU team shows up next week against Colorado. But for now, thanks for watching.